until you can't bake anymore.
Don't do a deal that could cripple your business.
I agree with him. Don't do something that you'll regret afterwards.
Exactly.
Oh, Tracy, talk is so cheap.
Okay, we'd like to come back to you with 40 cents a jar in perpetuity.
$0.45 you have to do.
Come to mama!
Wow. Get thinking.
Good luck. Good luck.
Good work.
Mr. Wonderful will see his return sooner than he thinks.
Frank, how do you
and
feel
we're
being
just
in the same room
waiting.
as Mr. Wonderful?
Okay, so what happens to this company? No one's ever heard of Wicked Good Cupcakes before. Now, in those days, web services, the cloud, was very expensive. So if you wanted to increase the capacity of your website, you had to buy servers. It was much cheaper. But you have to guess, how many should I buy? I have no idea how many people are going to watch the show or anything. So what would always happen is a company would get on Shark Tank, it would air it Friday at 9 o'clock, and their site would blow up and they'd miss all their orders. But in this particular case, the husband of Tracy worked for Fidelity in Boston, and he worked for the online services. He was an analyst. So he went to his bosses and said, listen, can I borrow some capacity in the server farm from 9 to midnight to capture any orders we might get on Shark Tank? They were sympathetic. They lent him the server farm. We nearly took down Fidelity that night. This story was so powerful on television that I got my money back in 28 days. This is the highest IRR, internal rate of return deal in Shark Tank history. First royalty deal in Shark Tank history, proving that you can align your interests without owning equity in a family business. But something else happened that night that we learned from that's changed the way we think about Shark Tank forever. Scott, the husband, was an analyst. And what he did immediately in the morning is he went back and he looked at every single person that ordered that night. And they were all new customers, all of them. In America today, 8 out of 10 businesses fail within 36 months. 80% fail for one singular reason. The cost of acquiring the customer is higher than the lifetime value of the customer. In other words, in plain English, it costs more to acquire a customer than they're worth. And you go out of business, you go bankrupt, 80% of the time. What Scott discovered that night for thousands and thousands of people, his customer acquisition costs were zero. Nothing. Nothing. And it hit him like a bolt of lightning. He said to his wife and daughter, get back on television. You have a great story. How do we keep this going? And here they are a few weeks later, 2 years ago, on a daytime television show, talking about Wicked Good Cupcakes. Very compelling story, mother-daughter business, growing it generically and growing it and trying to get more customers. Here they are on ABC 2020, national primetime news show. They acquired 16,000 customers in 90 seconds when they aired that night. Here they are with Kris Jenner. What does Kris Jenner have to do with cupcakes? Nothing. But she's on television, and they're getting more customers. Here they are selling their 1 millionth jar in Faneuil Hall last year. Now, quick math. 1 million jars, 45 cents a jar. That's $450,000 for Mr. Wonderful. My accountants think they're selling something else. All of this television is acquiring customers, but that's not how they did it. What they discovered was, and this is for anybody that's interested in doing this, because this is ingenious. It wasn't the TV that got the new customers. It was taking the television image and a small portion of the video and serving it up on Twitter, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Facebook for free, and then on every single baking blog and every mommy blog and every blog they could find out, constantly repurposing this content over and over and over and over again. for free, keeping their customer acquisition costs at zero. This is the first company to do this way. And today, Wicked Good Cupcakes is the #1 cupcake FedExed in America. They're multimillionaires, these two ladies. And they did it all online, keeping their customer acquisition costs practically at zero. Now, something else I want to show you tonight, the lessons learned on Shark Tank. You should know that this show is actually called something else around the world. It's called Dragon's Den. It's owned by Sony Television. It's on in New Zealand, in England, in Canada, in Australia, in Brazil, all over the place. Entrepreneurs are the same all around the world. They speak multiple languages, but they're still entrepreneurs. It turns out, if you look at all of these pitches, the tens of thousands of them over the years that have been on in every geography around the world, there are 3 common attributes present, not some of the time, 100% of the time when an entrepreneur gets a check from an investor. Does not determine the outcome of the business, has nothing to do with what happens. It's the beginning of the journey. An entrepreneur wants to start a company, needs a check. These 3 attributes are always present every time they're successful, in every language, in every geography. I think of these, and if it's the only thing you remember of tonight's presentation, I want it to be this. To me, this is the definition of leadership. If you want to take somebody and have them follow you, they need to know where they're going. They need to understand what your idea is. So #1, they were able to articulate their opportunity in 90 seconds or less. Hi, I'm from Cohasset, Massachusetts. I make cupcakes. I put them in a mason jar. I FedEx them to people. I get it. I get it right away. That's 12 seconds. I understand exactly what you're doing. And if I like that idea, I'm intrigued. It turns out being able to articulate the opportunity is extremely important, and you have to be able to do it in a very short period of time. One of the attributes of leadership, whether you're a preacher, a general, a teacher, an entrepreneur, doesn't matter. With the same challenge. Now, #2 here takes a lot longer than 90 seconds, but it's very important. Now you have a great idea and you have everybody's ear and they're listening. You have to be able to explain why you're the right person to execute the business plan, to make the opportunity work. What is it about you that can actually make it happen? Because a great idea without executional skills is worthless. Worthless. So you have to explain, look, I've worked for competitors. This business was in my family for generations. I've tried it 3 times before it failed. The 4th time I figured out all my problems. What is it about you that tied to that idea makes you the path of least resistance for the investor? That they would give you money because they believe, and remember, investors are very simple. They want the highest returns with the path of least resistance with the least risk. That means you get a great operator running a great idea. That's how it works. Now, when these 2 are present, the room is sizzling like an isotope. Great idea, great executional skills, but there's one more. And this one is the killer. I have seen the oxygen sucked out of a room so fast when this happened. It was like death was visiting. Here it is. You've got a great idea. You've proven and explained why you have great executional skills. You have to know your numbers. How big is the market? How fast is it growing? How many competitors are there? What's the break-even analysis? You saw Tracy in that video. She knew to the penny what her large jar and what her small jar cost, and what she had to do in volume to break even. To the penny, as she got peppered with questions. If you get the first 2 right, and you've got everybody wanting to write a check, and you don't know your numbers, you deserve to burn in hell in perpetuity, and I will put you there myself. You have to bring somebody that knows numbers, because that's the measurement of business. That's what matters. These 3 are always present all of the time. They will be in a week, they'll be in a month, in a year, in 100 years, it'll still matter. If you're planning to run a business or manage people, or want to take risks with other people's capital, you have to know these. They have to be embedded in your brain all of the time. Something else. I've got over 30 companies I've invested in now. When you take risk like that, your accountants force you to do something called a going concern test every December. If you have control of a company and it's not profitable, you have a decision to make at the end of every tax year. One option is this. You don't write a check and you bankrupt it so you can take the tax loss. Yeah, it happens all the time. After 3 years, if you're not making money, most investors get investor fatigue and they'd rather take you behind the barn and shoot it. Because it still has value as a tax loss. And this happens over and over again. This is the Darwinian nature of business. Years ago, we decided to try and figure out why was it so many of the companies were successful while others weren't. Success being defined by returning all the capital. Free cash flow, very simple. This is not academic research, this is real money I'm talking about. And we started looking at every single investment and trying to figure out, was there anything common about the winners versus the losers? And we discovered something remarkable. And I took all of this data and brought all the companies together for the first time this February in a hotel called the Betsy on Collins Avenue in South Beach in Florida for 3 days. Very much like a seminar we're having here tonight, except we talked about what was working and what wasn't. I'm going to share that data with you now. Number one, almost all of the returns, almost all, over all those years, came from companies run by women. Now, why is that? Why? Why? Look, I'm not trying to start gender warfare here. I'd give money to a goat if I could get a return. But I want to know what happened. Why is this happening? We need to know. I'm going to share the data. Here's some of the women that did it. You saw Tracy and Danny. To the top right is Sarah Mangelis, who runs Honey Fund, $500 million in origination of honeymoon gifts. She's now the back office for Target. Bottom left is Wine and Design, 1,200 square feet in malls all over America where you paint and drink wine. Who knew that would work? It's a huge hit. Bottom right, 2 women in Washington, D.C. that got mothers to buy old science kits instead of having their kids on tablets and cell phones all night. You know those volcanoes you put baking soda in and they blow up and all that stuff? Huge hit. Huge. What are they doing? How are they doing it? Well, let's start with some of the attributes we discovered. Number one, you know that old adage, you want something done, give it to a busy mother? Time allocation skills are a big deal in small companies. Average size of these companies have 26 people in them. Smallest is 5 million in sales, largest 500 million. But 26 people, that's not a lot of people running a company, which means most of them are doing everything all of the time. And great managers are able to allocate how they spend their time. Set a goal for somebody and tell them how to use that time successfully. Stay out of their way, but allocate time, including their own. But I don't think that's the one that made the difference. To me, it's this one. Listen to this. We went back over 7 years and looked at every single quarter. In other words, every 3 months, and looked at the sales estimate versus what was achieved. What the goal was and what actually happened. In the case of the company run by men, they achieved their goals 65% of the time. And they had very lofty goals, very high goals. We call that this testosterone target because they're always reaching for the stars. I thought that was great. Then we looked at the companies run by women. They hit their goals 95% of the time, but they pulled down the estimates by 30% sometimes. They sandbagged it. Why would you care? Why would that matter? Why would that in any way change the free cash flow outcome of these companies? Why would it change the return on equity at all? What's going on there? Well, here's what's going on. This is friggin' brilliant. If you're in a company that is constantly hitting its targets, quarter after quarter after quarter, it's like being on a winning baseball team. You never want to get traded. You want to stay with the winners. You want to stay there and go there every day because you like that culture. You want to be part of a winning team. And why that manifests itself in better cash flows is practically no turnover at all. 0 employee turnover. When nobody leaves, the head of sales doesn't leave, the head of accounting, the head of logistics, there's no disruption. It's stable. Cash flows, returns back to shareholders. This is brilliant. And I realized right away, Stop setting goals you can't achieve. It's stupid. You're not fooling anybody. You're just making it very frustrating for people who work there. They never hit their goals. And we changed in February forever, and already we're seeing the results. This is brilliant. By setting goals you can achieve, even though you lower them by as much as 30%, you create a culture of success, stability, and better returns for investors. It's that simple. But there's more. As Sarah likes to say, when you're starting a business, because each CEO got up and spoke to the others for 3 days, and she likes to say, shut up and listen. Think about when you're running a business or you're starting one. You have 3 constituencies you have to take care of. 1, customers. You don't have a business without customers. You gotta listen to what they're saying. You have to listen, shut up and listen. One of the biggest problems entrepreneurs have, and I've seen this happen for years, is they have this myopic vision of where they're going. That's what gives them the motivation. It's great. And they just see it there all the time, and they don't want anybody to tell them it's different. They don't listen. They just keep driving towards their original vision, and they fail. Because they don't listen to their customers. You also have to listen to your employees. Your employees know your problems are long before you do. Long before you do. And you have to listen to them every day. And then you have to listen to your investors or the bank that's financing you. Those are 3 constituents you have to listen to. And the reason you have to listen is because the world is constantly changing around you. And if you're listening as an entrepreneur that has this skill, it's like putting your ear to the track and you hear the train coming at you before it runs you over. And you pivot and you change because you've now realized something else has happened you weren't anticipating. That's the nature of business. Great entrepreneurs are able to grow businesses past 5 million in sales because they listen. That's the first step of failure. I can't tell you how many people I've taken up behind the barn and shot and replaced because they don't listen. And I'm doing them a favor by putting them out of their misery because they don't have the capability to do what they have to do. You've got to listen as an entrepreneur and pivot and grow with the market. Changing out entrepreneurs is painful, but I know the difference between ones that can listen and ones that can't. Now here's the one that is really interesting. Let's go back to the cupcake story. No one's ever heard of Wicked Good Cupcakes. They see it on TV, they try it, they like it. From that moment on, they're anticipating the next time they try a Wicked Good Cupcake, it's going to taste exactly the same as the one they bought for the first time. And they buy it again. And lo and behold, they like it again. Cupcakes like this are usually bought on holidays or birthdays. Then they buy it a third time. It's the same experience, really good. You know what's happening there? There's a brand being built that's extremely valuable. The person buying the product is now associating it with the name of the company and the product. And that's the beginning of building a brand. And it's extremely valuable because someday somebody's going to want to buy that brand from you because remember, it's just a cupcake. Anybody can make it, but it's a wicked good cupcake. And people know it to be something they like. That's the good news. Here's the bad news. 30 years ago, when you got a product or service and you didn't like it, you picked up the yellow pages, you called the company, and you yelled at somebody in customer support. That's not what happens today. When you get mad about a product or service you don't like, you go online and you go crazy. And the damage is unbelievable. Unhappy customers do unbelievable damage to brands. Think about the airlines recently. Think of what happened there. Think of what goes on anytime anybody's unhappy. They go viral, they go nuts, and they don't stop. So that's changed how business works. I have a phone here with a red case on it I want to show you. This phone has every alert from every social media platform for every company and every brand that I own. And when it lights up and I see something go viral, it's because something bad is happening. And I immediately jump on it. I call the office 24/7 saying, what's happening here? Because you can see it sweeping across social media. Whatever it is that's happening. Because somebody's motivated to do damage. And here's what you have to do. Now this costs money, and it's a change in how people run businesses. Here's what you have to know. When a customer goes and is unhappy, you usually can't fix it. It's very hard. They're just gone, but they don't stop. But here's what's interesting about the digital platforms of the world today. Every time they complain, that's a digital record. Every time you try and make them happy, it's a digital audit trail of a dialogue between you and an unhappy customer. And people are not stupid. They start to see that you as a company are trying to do everything in your power to make them happy again, and yet you can't. Barely 10% of the time can you bring that customer back in the fold. They're just so unhappy with you. But people see you're trying, and they understand that you care, and that everything you're doing is being put out there forever in a digital audit trail, and it takes time and it costs money, and you're trying to make it right. That's how you protect a brand. And here's the dirty, dark secret of this. 30% of the time, the people that are doing this to you are not customers, they're your competitors. It's terrible, but it happens every single day. They're trying to tear down your business, and you have to call them out and make sure everybody knows what's going on. And you know this. You know this because you can find out who they are, and all of a sudden you realize they never bought the product. They're just the other guys making cupcakes. And that is the digital war that goes on, and it costs money, but it's imperative that you do this and understand it, not getting caught, because customers that have gone motivated to tear you down do tremendous, tremendous damage. We're here to talk about money, so I'm going to share some investment rules that I like to talk about. I'm not saying you should do this, but this is what I do. I want to start with a lesson. You saw that video. When I was graduating, my mother said to me, when I was graduating college, I'm coming to the graduation, and I've got good news and I've got good news. The good news is I'm coming, and the other good news is no more checks. I said, well, wait a minute, I don't have a job. She said, it's okay. I've paid for you from birth to last day of college, and I'm done. And she said to me, the dead bird under the nest never learns how to fly. And I said, Mom, that's a great poem, but I need some cash here. I don't have a job. She said, it doesn't matter. You're going to go figure it out. And I had a really tough couple of years. But I learned something from that lesson that stuck with me forever, because when she passed away over 10 years ago, I'm the older brother, and the executor called me. I'm 2 years older than my brother. And he said, listen, you've got to come down here. Your mother died a very wealthy woman. She never disclosed the secret account she had from both of her husbands. She kept it for herself. I always wondered where she had all that money from. Where did it come from? She could support me like that through my entire youth. And here's what I discovered. She had bought, for over 50 years, large cap dividend paying stocks, 21 of them, and a whole bunch of telco bonds. She had this thing in her head that nobody ever welches on their phone bill because they don't want to lose communication. They'll turn their heat off, but they'll keep their phone on. She was right. That portfolio beat everybody in the family, beat every investor that I worked with. And I did some research, and I discovered something remarkable about this. In the stock market, over 70% of the returns don't come from capital appreciation, meaning the stock going up. It comes from dividends. Profitable companies returning capital back to people because they're shareholders. After all, the only way you can make money in a stock that doesn't pay a dividend is it has to go up. Sometimes they don't go up. Sometimes they go down. Sometimes they do nothing. But when it pays a dividend, even if it goes down, you're making money because they're paying you your portion of the profits. So that changed me forever. I do not buy stocks that don't pay dividends ever. And people say, well, you don't have the hot internet stocks. Well, I have Microsoft, I have Boeing, I have Apple. They're growing like crazy, and they pay big, fat, succulent, juicy dividends every quarter. You just have to pick the ones that pay you back. She used to say, I got to get paid to wait. I make an investment. So that's my number one rule. Here's some others. The only free lunch in investing is diversification. I never let a stock become more than 5% of my portfolio. Last year, Apple and Boeing grew so much that every 90 days I had to sell it down to 5%. The downside of that is you never get 100% of the upside of the market. You only get about 82%. But when the market corrects, you only correct 50 to 60% of the market correction because you've been selling your profits all the time. You've been doing that every time a company grows more than 5%. You're protecting yourself. It's a rule. Number 2, we now have 11 sectors in the economy. A couple of years ago, they added real estate as a sector to the S&P, so energy is a sector, pharmaceuticals are a sector, biotech is a sector, defense is a sector. When people got killed in the late 90s is they let technology become more than 20% of their holdings. Some of them went to 80% with internet stocks that didn't pay any dividends, and they got slaughtered. Never let a sector become more than 20% and own all the sectors. Last year, energy was a terrible sector. Now it's doing very well. It's this diversification theme coming at you again. Number 3, this is my moral, my mother's rule. Never own a position that doesn't pay either interest or a dividend. I view my portfolio like a chicken on a spit dripping cash. Everything I own pays me. And I need that cash because I have a very expensive wife. But I never touch the principal. Never. Ever. I adjust my lifestyle to what I can make in interest and dividends, and I never touch the principal. Today, the problem is you don't know when you're going to die. And the worst thing that can happen is you outlive your own estimates with no money. It's hard to make money when you're 95 years old. You want to have some. That's why you never touch the principal. I always own at least 35% in fixed income, which means bonds or real estate that's generating cash. Today I'm at 50%, and I like that. It's very boring. It only makes about 2.6%, but it's very stable. When markets are correcting, you want stability. The older you get, the more protection you want. I have this concept of preservation of performance after you're 40. Don't take risks after you're 40. Preserve your money and adjust your lifestyle down to what you can make off the interest and dividends. This is a core philosophy that I learned from my mother. And number 6, this is life. In life, poo-poo happens. You don't know when it's going to hit you. Car accident, catastrophic illness, a business fails. Your sister calls you in need. You need liquidity. You got to have some cash amount, 10%. You only make about 1% on cash right now, but it's a lifesaver when you need it. It really matters. And one of the biggest challenges people have as they age is what to do with children. I'm going to tell you what I decided to do. When I had my big liquidity event, and we sold the learning company to Mattel, there were 9 of us that started it, and we sold it for $4.2 billion. We had nothing. Then we decided, what are we going to do with this stuff? And I decided, way back then when I was living in Boston, that I was going to create what's called a generational skipping trust, that I would take that money out of my name, give it to trustees, and that trust would provide for children from birth to last day of college. And then they get nothing. But when they have children, full freight, birth to last day of college. And when those kids have kids, same deal, forever. Birth to last day of college. And when I went home that night, my kids were 4 and 6, and I saw them after school, and I said, hey kids, Daddy's done something great for you. No matter what happens to me, if I get run over by a truck, this trust is going to take care of you till you're finished college. And they just laughed and we went back to watching cartoons. Years later, when my son was in grade 10 and doing very poorly, he came to me and he said, Dad, can you walk me through that trust deal again? I said, sure, Trevor, here's how it works. It's going to take care of you right till you finish high school, because it doesn't look like you have to worry about college. And then you get nothing. And he said, wait a minute, I get nothing? I said, the dead bird under the nest never learns how to fly. And he said, that sucks. I said, yeah, but you're not done yet. You still got a few years of runway left. Why don't you take advantage of it and figure out what you're going to do? Because life is really tough without any money, Trevor. Now, I don't know if it was that night, but today he's in 3rd year electrical engineering, and I think he's going to get a job. He's used the deal. He's figured it out. It's very expensive to go through engineering and electrical, but that's the deal. And I talked about something very important at the beginning of this presentation. I want to circle back at the end now. The pursuit of entrepreneurship has nothing to do with greed of money or wealth. Zero. It's the pursuit of personal freedom. That's what it is. If you're successful in America and you work like hell when you're young and in the middle years, it's because you're free at the end to do whatever you pursue, whatever you want. That's what it is to be successful. You don't need more money, you need more freedom. You need to be able to do with what you want with your years, particularly when they start running out. My definition of freedom today is, and I say this to my family, my extended family now, pick a city every weekend, because I'm not home during the week. I travel all week long. But every weekend, I want to gather the family to be together. That's my gift. That's my definition of freedom. Pick any city on earth. Could be Geneva, could be Paris, could be Maui, I don't care. And I'll fly you and all your friends, girlfriends, boyfriends. Let's get together and we'll scatter on Sunday night. Do it every weekend. Don't care what it costs. I deserve it because I worked hard and I can do it. And very often, what we might do is go see my stepfather who lives in Geneva. He's 87, sound mind and body, but he's not getting on a plane. If we want to see him, we got to go see him. I got to fly there. And we'll often go Friday night, fly to Zurich, take the train to Nyon where he lives, have dinner at my favorite place, Auberge de Dulier. They make grilled chicken, best in the world. Drink some fondant, get back on the plane Sunday, come back. So I know it sounds crazy. Trevor does it with me a lot. He gets tired of working like hell as an engineer and says, I'll go. I'll never forget this conversation. Here it is. We're getting on the plane, he's probably done it 20 times. He says, Dad, why is it every time I get on this plane, I have to take a left and go sit in the back? And you take a right and go sit at the front of the plane in a giant seat where they roll a roast beef on a trolley by you, and you sit and watch movies and drink wine, and I'm back in 69D. And I said, Trevor, you don't have any money. Thank you very much. I enjoyed myself.